Oh man, Nesthorn. Ugh. Well, actually, with these particular players, this might actually turn into a decent map. The reason that Nesthorn can be a real pain in the butt is just because you have only one ground path. So it's a map that lends itself very well to stagnation, to very long turtly games. A lot of people generally don't like Nesthorn. But hey, if that's the choice, if the players themselves want to play on it, I can't really stop them. Either way, we've got Mega Salt, we've got Liobuster and sporefreak on the left-hand side. They are the losing team from the previous match, game 1 of this series. So they're the ones who chose Nesthorn, and if we have a problem with this, we'll just blame them later. Meanwhile, we have Teen Angst, we have Frexion and k4rs. Two players that have actually, I've never seen either of these guys before, but they've been pretty baller as far as the strategies that they use, how robust they are, how well thought out they are, and honestly turning out to be a pretty good team. Liobuster and sporefreak going to be Helix and Warthog, whereas Frexion going to stick with that offensive harass, going to try and pick off any infantry he can, if only to slow down the green team. This is good because neither of the green team players right now want to build infantry. So that is going to put them behind by like a full minute. So Carbon able to capture that outpost, whereas green, they're still in the middle of neutralizing. Frexion's going to drop in again. He's just fishing for some infantry to kill. Unable to pick those ones off, so doesn't have the health to make it to the next outpost, so he's going to come back, heal, top off, and then he's going to push forward to the next one and try and pick off any infantry that he can there. Because if he can kill the infantry, he's going to be in pretty good shape. Or if he can pick off any units, he's going to be in pretty good shape. But so green team is deliberately ferrying over to the carbon side of this chasm. We'll see if sporefreak and Liobuster have something sneaky up their sleeve. If they can get a good foothold right here, then that is going to be difficult for the carbon team to dislodge without owning the middle outpost as well. So k4rs is holy heavy mines, dropping a lot of mines on defense. And if Liobuster and sporefreak aren't careful or don't press with a couple of zippers first, they are going to lose their entire army to those. But not going that direction. They're instead going to focus their efforts on the middle outpost. Sporefreak putting those on hold just in range of the Seeker, so that they can start taking that out. Unfortunately, they are also in range of the neutral busters, so they're going to start losing that as well. Now, Frexion and k4rs drop a couple of heavy mines towards the middle as well. That way, no matter which way green pushes, they're going to find a heavy mine surprise. Liobuster and sporefreak are actually going to try and cheese a little bit here. And try and neutralize this post, but the Gemini are on C, not R, so they're not even attempting to shoot anything. They are way too distracted. sporefreak may not even get out of this alive, because the Striker is a pretty good air-to-air mech. It's also got afterburners, so it can speed up and actually catch anyone who's trying to run away. Especially when the Helix is out of energy, it just flies so much slower. Liobuster going with Buckies of all things. Unfortunately getting a little bit too over-aggressive with his leapfrogging. He's in range of multiple neutral T-99s and busters. And Green Team is really losing a lot of units here that they shouldn't be losing, just because they're a little bit too aggressive here. Liobuster himself getting taken out here, just because of that, I guess, lack of situational awareness for just that second. Frexion then drops in and finishes off the last of those units that the neutrals didn't get themselves. So Carbon is going to have a distinct advantage. We've got 50 versus 29 upkeep. Almost twice as much, but Carbon's units aren't over here. Carbon has most of their upkeep in heavy mines and a bunch of light units back at their forward outpost. k4rs is trying to drop behind. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. This backdropping is not going to be super effective. Nesthorn, a very narrow map, very clear mini-map awareness for both of these teams. But those health bars can be tricky. Frexion going to go down because Warthog, pretty strong, pretty good, and is going to be able to take him out in air-to-air fire. Unfortunately, that Buster may tag him in return. Oh, gets the air shot but does not get the hog. So these neutral busters definitely MVP for this game. Still trying to backdrop from the Carbon team. They're just dropping a handful of jumpers. I don't think that's going to be particularly effective. You know, dropping on the left-hand side as well, just trying to get some units behind. I think ultimately these Dillos are going to end up getting killed, and Carbon's not going to be able to hold on to this outpost. k4rs getting taken down from the airfire. Frexion trying to drop some jumpers behind. Sporefreak being a Helix, not able to kill those infantry very well. There's no area of effect that he has, and there's no guns. It's only missiles. So Frexion able to cheese this forward outpost. But Carbon Team has got no unit follow-up. They're not dumping units out of this, and you've still got an angry green Warthog knocking down a bunch of these tanks, but there's no heals, there's no Warthog, there's no Repair Guardians. He's going to get killed, and this base is not going to go neutral. So, ouch. That puts green at a very significant disadvantage, but they do hold middle. Middle is a pretty good position. They can drop this outpost from behind. They can also press forward into any other outpost they want fairly easily, so long as they hold middle. Middle is a very strong position, so don't count this green team out just yet. So k4rs is locking down this outpost, socketing jumpers. He could even do a little bit more and socket something in the lunchbox. Looks like Liobuster did drop a couple of tanks on the offense to try and take a little bit of fort damage, just to make Carbon look somewhere else. If they can keep putting damage in somewhere else, then ultimately that will start to pay off. Now, Sporefreak and Liobuster are now tasked with getting out alive. Liobuster unable to. Sporefreak might not be able to either, but he's right on top of his outpost, so he does get there. There's just way too much anti-air focus around there. The Buckies are a nice touch, but ultimately they need, while they're taking that attention, there need to be some Buckies on this side, because Buckies outrange virtually every other unit in this game. So ultimately getting a couple of those Buckies behind, chipping away when no one's looking, that's when they're going to be effective. Trying to do Buckies in a one-on-one or any kind of direct head-on confrontation, not going to be particularly effective. So Frexion going to queue up more jumpers, going to go for another backdrop, but he walks right into Sporefreak, so going to abort. He drops one to do fort damage just to make Sporefreak land. Missiles versus jumpers, not very good. So those Helix missiles, they're pretty good against grouped heavy armor targets. They're pretty bad against things like infantry. So Sporefreak's actually finding himself really unable to deal with these various infantry cheeses that Frexion's whipping out. So Frexion with another pile of brutes and jumpers, just trying to neutralize and cheese these bases wherever he can. Odds are he's going to have more infantry in queue. He's going to be able to capture it, and then he can dump a whole bunch of tanks right on top of that. But Sporefreak is putting in fort damage. You know, it doesn't matter if you control the whole map. If you blow up the fort, you win the game. So these Buckies here are going to be, they're doing work. I mean, Carbon Team, they're at about a third of their health despite this map advantage. Well, I say advantage, it's a one outpost difference, so it's not like the end-all be-all either. Liobuster trying to micromanage some of these Buckies behind, but being a Warthog, he's not particularly maneuverable when he's trying to shoot, so Frexion and k4rs just kind of dance around him in the air. So Sporefreak still getting a couple shots in here and there on that fort, but Carbon finds itself unit capped now. They've got 84 out of 84 upkeep, and because they have to focus on multiple places, they have to focus on their forward, they have to focus on their close, and they have to focus on the enemy forward. They're spread out to 3 different spots. So Green Team has kind of a positional advantage. This middle outpost is a very strong staging point that can go pretty much wherever they want. They could even ferry and just go straight to fort, and Carbon would not be able to build anything to defend from that. Carbon, recognizing that their unit capped, is starting to socket whoppers around the map to try and push their upkeep up a little bit. So instead of 86, now it's 90. But anyway, Sporefreak trying to get a good position. He's putting artillery down. He's putting Buckies down. The more long-range damage, the more fronts he can open, the better. But Frexion and k4rs getting a little bit of a coordinated drop here, trying desperately to cheese this. I don't know why they don't go for a full frontal, but if they can cheese it, they can cheese it. That damage is just so good from the Warthog and the Helix, though. And the Carbon Team is going to drop their tanks on top of these heavy mines in this micro battle. But k4rs, being the Osprey, is able to continuously disarm those mines just by holding right-click on them. Sporefreak and Lexion... Liobuster, I keep calling him Lixian, are able to recapture this outpost, re-secure it under their control, kill the enemy player. They might kill k4rs as well if he's going to be up front like this. So yeah, k4rs probably going to go down as well, but the Warthog is distracted with ground fire, so that doesn't happen. So this is still theirs. They do have an upkeep disadvantage. They do have an outpost disadvantage, but the artillery continuing to rain fire down, as long as Carbon is involved in other places, this is going to continue getting not dealt with, and those artillery are going to eventually be worth their weight in gold. Meanwhile, the units here not really getting dealt with all that effectively. Sporefreak doing some good air-to-ground damage, but k4rs coming in and healing Frexion up so that Sporefreak is unable to really get the kill there. So the initiative, I'd say, is on Carbon to get something done with this massive unit advantage. Now, fortunately, Green Team, with that middle position, is going to continue dropping in fort damage. Liobuster is going to take out these defenders, and then there's nothing left. He's just got 3 Buckies. He's going to kill some of these Whoppers, so that that cuts out Carbon upkeep a little bit more. Carbon is now unit capped again, unable to build anything on the defense until they lose some more units. So Sporefreak, meanwhile, is still setting up long-range units. He's still setting up these artillery and Buckies to do as much damage as he can to these Carbon unit clusters. And over time, those kills are going to add up. Sporefreak and Liobuster are hovering maybe around 20k credits apiece, whereas Frexion and k4rs, this bank is going to go up and up. All the money in your bank at any point is useless, because it's unspent. It's a lost opportunity. Liobuster might get taken out, but k4rs unable to dogfight with the latency, and so he's aiming just a little bit behind. Likewise, when he's trying to track Sporefreak, when you are trying to catch a player who's moving perpendicular to your fire path, you need to lead your shots just a little bit. That way you'll actually do a lot more damage as your shots actually hit them on the server side. Because when you see a person and they're moving, they're really just a little bit less than a half second in front of where they actually are, where they display. Liobuster taking a lot of damage from these Dillos, might actually get killed by them. Fortunately, Frexion not there to see him lift off. Frexion finally going for the fort himself, realizes, you know what, we have the close post. Why haven't we been attacking the fort? Because they're right there, so they're going to start ferrying some of these units, because these drop battles over on this other outpost really aren't working. In fact, this is kind of the longest sustained people owning the opposite side of Nesthorn fight I've seen. Normally it tends to be a fairly snowbally map. So Liobuster is able to fend off most of these Dillos. k4rs getting killed by Sporefreak with those missiles. Helix pretty good too. Liobuster not able to kill those tanks. Those are saved by Frexion just in the nick of time. Frexion building gangsters, thinking that he can just go ahead and blitz this fort with everything he's got, since the game is pretty much stopped. But Sporefreak and Liobuster having the same idea, thinking maybe they can turn this into a base race or something. But once again, those artillery are still doing work. Carbon doesn't have a whole lot of units left at this close post, so depending on how they manage their units for the rest of this game, we may see it go either way. Frexion is trying to get aggressive, but Sporefreak is able to shut down most of that aggression. Unfortunately, Carbon Team has Lunchbox, Green Team does not. So all these little ticks of damage left and right are going to ultimately favor the Carbon Team, seeing as Green Team is not healing. Oh, Green Team does have a Lunchbox. There you go. So this could still go either way, depending on how Green flexes its use of that middle outpost and how map-aware Carbon is for the different things that Green is trying to do. Ultimately, I'd say the initiative is still on Carbon. They have this close outpost, and they have the position to just push straight to fort. If they just sent all of these units in, even with a little bit of backup, they would be able to quickly overwhelm these defenders. Green would not be able to build anything to support or defend. They'd have to manually ferry everything they wanted from that middle outpost. Green, meanwhile, getting the same idea, saying, why not go straight for the throat? So these couple of tanks behind, those are just there to buy time. Those are just there to distract. So Liobuster moving forward with a big chunk of Longhorn and some anti-air behind. So Frexion is not going to be able to land and just sword this. This is going to be a hefty chunk of damage. Probably not going to be GG, but this is going to be a noticeable amount of damage that gets done. Now, the Sword and Shield is useful when you have an Osprey there who's healing you. Frexion almost getting taken down, but the Osprey does save him just in the nick of time. That was a fast reaction from both of the Carbon Team players, dropping tons of tanks right in front of that pile of green units, able to prevent a lot of that damage from coming in. Liobuster, strangely, with 2 lunchboxes, might potentially socket one on one of his outposts. That will prevent them from getting neutralized as quickly. So it puts one on this outpost, one on the fort. It's got an overshield on each spot. It's going to have a little bit easier of a time. Meanwhile, Carbon taking advantage, taking all their unit advantage. They've got the 2-to-1 upkeep lead, and they're going to try to neutralize this middle outpost, but dropping everything on C. They're not trying to hit the base, which means Green is going to continuously be able to pull out more and more reinforcements, get more and more healing. The focus needs to be on the neutralize. So Frexion dropping a couple of gangsters, sniping out the lunchbox again, just doing a little bit more of this tick damage. Now this is a good spot to put these because you cannot block this damage. You can't put any units in front of this to prevent this damage from coming in, but also not dropping on T is going to mean that they're not going to be focusing on the fort, and any units dropped next to them are actually going to be focusing damage on those units. Sporefreak looks like he's infinitely trying to recycle things. I'll call it a UI bug. So Liobuster is also just trying to drop the fort, and I don't know why neither team is making any attempt to push towards outpost control. But if it wants to come down to a base race, it comes down to a base race. But I do think Carbon Team has a firm advantage there, especially since they still have units defending their base from these Goliaths. This scrappy pile of Dillos may be able to put those down, since Goliaths are on T and will not be focusing on those Dillos. Meanwhile, Carbon Team continues to drop more units in here. Green Team is doing a good job blocking, but there's not a whole lot of heals. k4rs does go down to Sporefreak's air-to-ground missiles. Another lunchbox goes down, but they need to stop the damage coming in, and they are unable to do it. Frexion and k4rs taking the second game in this best of 3 in the semifinals. Sporefreak and Liobuster getting knocked out. Team Megasalt. But anyway, GG's all around.